WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Visit Bloomington. With over 350 restaurants to choose from, Bloomington, Indiana is truly a food lover's paradise. Go to visitbloomington.com to discover what suits your taste.
This is WFYI News Now. It's January 24th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, we'll check in on Indiana's unemployment rate, learn about a state house bill that would create a hunting and trapping season for bobcats, another bill that would apply new criminal background requirements to home health agencies, and a federal grand jury indicted 3 former administrators from virtual schools for an alleged scheme to defraud Indiana.
As a result of the scheme, the virtual schools received more than $44 million they weren't entitled to.
Those stories coming up. But first, Purdue University is hoping to bring its strengths in engineering to the Indianapolis campus and grow partnerships throughout the state. Associate Director for the Office of Professional Practice, Joe Tort, says these connections will get more students on-the-job experience.
Having this base in Indianapolis will allow us to have a lot more industry involvement in our classrooms and on campus on a daily basis.
Purdue has already seen applicants from all 50 states. Senior Associate Dean for the Indianapolis campus, Alina Alexenko, says the college is excited for the next chapter.
We think it will be, in many ways, a gain for Indiana and a gain for our students.
The Indianapolis campus officially launches July 1st. And Indiana's unemployment rate improved in December for the first time in 8 months. As Brandon Smith reports, the measure is 3.6%, back below the national unemployment rate.
3.6% is where Indiana's unemployment rate had been in September and October, and the rate has now been below 4% for 2.5 years. But Indiana's labor force participation rate dropped in December to its lowest point in nearly 2 years. That measure takes into account not just people with jobs, but also those actively looking for work, and it's often used as a sign of optimism in the economy. Still, the rate remains above the national labor force participation rate, and most of the state's employment sectors added jobs last month. The notable exceptions were the financial sector and leisure and hospitality jobs. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
A state Senate bill would establish a hunting and trapping season for bobcats in Indiana by July of next year. Rebecca Thiel reports this isn't the first time lawmakers have tried to make taking bobcats legal, and it's still a divisive topic in Indiana.
Bobcats were taken off the Indiana endangered species list in 2005. Now Republican Senator Scott Baldwin says they could be growing out of control. They're devastating squirrel, rabbit, and turkey populations on land he owns in southern Indiana.
It feels as though they're getting to the point we're seeing other animals in the ecosystem starting to decline. There's anecdotal evidence. We're seeing it on our trail cams.
But the Humane Society of the United States questions whether the state has enough data on bobcat numbers to support a sustainable hunting season. The Indiana Natural Resources Commission took up the issue in 2018 and found it was unpopular with many Hoosiers. The group says Indiana also allows residents to get a permit to kill a bobcat if it's hurting livestock. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
Baldwin says most of Indiana's surrounding states have limited bobcat hunting seasons. The bill passed committee and now moves to the full Senate for consideration. And a bill that updates which crimes would bar individuals from working at a home health agency passed the House on Monday. The bill would apply similar criminal background requirements used for long-term care facilities to home health agencies. Rachel Swartwood with the Indiana Department of Health testified on the bill when it was heard in the House Public Health Committee. She says the department believes this section of the bill addresses a consumer protection issue for the aging population.
There are certain crimes that bar individuals from employment at a long-term care facility. We found that these same crimes do not bar individuals from employment at a home health agency.
Swartwood says examples of crimes that would be excluded are sex crimes, felony battery, and manslaughter. Among other things, the bill updates food safety rules, removes the sunset date on the Maternal Mortality Review Committee, and adds another position to Indiana's Rare Disease Advisory Council. And for our final story today, a federal grand jury indicted 3 former administrators from troubled virtual schools for an alleged scheme to defraud Indiana. From WFYI's education desk, Dylan Pierce-McCoy reports the officials are accused of lying about how many students went to the schools.
Indiana Virtual School and its sister school, Indiana Virtual Pathways Academy, abruptly closed in 2019 after allegations of enrollment fraud. Now, a federal grand jury has indicted Thomas Stoughton, Philip Holden, and Percy Clark for the alleged fraud. Indiana funds schools based on enrollment. The indictment says school officials knew that many of the students they reported to the state were not genuinely enrolled. As a result of the scheme, the virtual schools received more than $44 million they weren't entitled to. Stoughton allegedly spent some money from the schools on luxuries like jewelry and a Cadillac. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
An attorney for Stoughton declined to comment. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Darian Benson, Drew Dodlin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.